allow me to get right to the point. Due to decades of fire suppression, our nation's forests are now in a crisis. Roughly 128 million acres of public forests nationwide and over 13 million acres here in Oregon are at risk of unnaturally severe fire unless we take immediate action. From a conservation perspective, the current conditions on our national forests is not only impacting fish, wildlife, and water quality, it's also adding to the problem of climate change. But beyond the ecological impacts, this is an economic issue as well. Today, nearly $1.5 billion is spent every year to fight fires, and as all of you know, a lot of personal property is lost along the way. Firefighting costs now consume close to 50% of the Forest Service budget, leaving less and less money available to be proactive to address the critical needs within the forests. To restore our forests back to health, the scientists at the Nature Conservancy estimate that in Oregon alone, over the next 25 years, we need to be treating with thinning and prescribed fire at least 550,000 acres annually. 550,000 acres annually, well over 3 times the current rate of treatment. We are asking you today to support a proposal we believe provides the triple bottom line for Oregon's future: healthy forests, economic opportunity, and a renewable energy resource. All of us, political, business, community, and conservation leaders, must work together to define a common vision for the future of Oregon's forests. To complete restoration projects at the requisite scale, we must invest in community-based consensus-building efforts that build trust and respect among the stakeholders. By keeping the ecological needs of the forest first, working together, we can bring the forest back to health, achieve what I believe is one of the most significant challenges facing this generation. Now I'd like to turn it over to Steve Grasty from Harney County. Steve, it's all yours.
Good afternoon. In 3 minutes or less, I'm going to try and tell you why Eastern Oregon communities so desperately need this, the initiative we're advocating for here. One thing I want to point out, in the last 24 hours of weather have demonstrate the difference in management that's required between the dry Eastern Oregon pine forest and the forest over here. There's more rain here in the last 24 hours than a third of a year's average would be on our forest. In all their zeal, the environmental movement started in the 70s successfully eliminated or severely reduced the Eastern Oregon timber industry to a tiny percentage of what it once was. In many areas of our national forests, that resulted in no on-the-ground management for the last 25 years. You might think that could be a good thing to allow the forest to return to a natural state. The problem is that during that time, we've also prevented forest fires for way too many years. And I brought a picture today to demonstrate it from the Egley complex of last summer. It's a 143,000 acre fire, and what you're looking at is land with thousands of trees per acre where there should be between 30 and 75. Our rural communities are just as committed to good environmental health as even the most dedicated environmentalist is. Let me say that again. Oregon's rural communities are intensely committed to having good environmental health in our forest. Our local community's social and economic fiber is interwoven with our local environment. Additionally, our communities rightfully fear the fire potential from those unmanaged federal grounds that bump up against our towns and homes. Outside interest groups have long tried to demonstrate how they better understood the workings of healthy forests than those who live in, around, and work in the forest. Again, I think that picture demonstrates the error in that thinking. The initiative that you're going to vote on shortly is a first step and a solution to this dilemma. Time is of the essence. We cannot wait and see yet another year of catastrophic fires, nor can we allow more mills to close. The opportunity for our communities to stabilize and restore our neighboring forest, to pursue forest jobs, to supply energy and forest products to this nation is closely tied to those mills and related businesses. And as we talk about global warming, at least a partial solution through carbon banking is sustaining those forests and getting them healthy again. Every one of these environmental opportunities can also result in restoring the social and economic conditions in our rural communities. And as you vote on this initiative, I hope that you'll think about these children, our children.
Thank you, Steve. From the business perspective, federal forest restoration means economic, ecological, and social benefit to Oregon. In Lakeview, my firm has moved forward on a stewardship agreement with the U.S. Forest Service to restore the 490,000-acre Lakeview Stewardship Unit. With the addition of a small log mill and a biomass power plant to utilize small-diameter timber and biomass from a fire-prone forest, we'll create over 70 new jobs in a county of 7,500 people. Thank you. That's the equivalent of 18,000 new jobs in the metropolitan Portland area. Think 1 Intel or 1.5 OHSUs. Russ told you that nearly 50% of the Forest Service budget will go to fire this fiscal year. In 1991, fire accounted for only 16% of the Forest Service budget. In 2000, it had crept up to 25%, and it's doubled to 50% in 7 short years. This is a crisis in the making. Nearly 10 million acres of wildfires occurred in the United States this year. Oregon accounted for about 650,000 acres of that total. While he may not tell you about it, Judge Grasty was forced to evacuate his home during the 143,000 Hoeflich fire, leaving behind all but the family pictures. Hundreds of thousands of your fellow Oregonians live in the urban wildland interface, and they may be faced with similar circumstances if we don't act now. The Hoeflich fire accounted for over 850,000 tons of CO2, contributing to global warming and creating health problems for area residents. On federal lands, we grow 20 billion board feet annually. We have a mortality of 10 billion board feet, and we harvest 2 billion board feet. It's not hard to see why we've got a forest health and restoration problem. We can reverse this trend by implementing the steps called for in the Federal Forest Restoration Initiative. That's the green packet in the handout they gave you. In the words of Tom McCall, heroes are not giant statues framed against the red sky. They are people who say, this is my community and it's my responsibility to make it better. I challenge you to do that by supporting and endorsing the Federal Forest Restoration Initiative. Thank you.
So here we have hundreds of thousands of acres of forest land in Oregon that is overgrown, unthinned, and therefore prone to disease and fire. It's not good for an ecosystem. It's not good for a timber industry. Why has it been so hard to bring folks together to take on this issue?
Well, I think there's 2 or 3 things. First, this federal land is managed mainly by the BLM and the Forest Service. They've been underfunded. They're short of personnel. Some of their best people have retired. I think professionally they know what the right thing to do is, but they just don't have the resources to do it. So resource is one. Secondly, we've got to start managing these lands at the landscape or local level instead of Washington, D.C. Quite frankly, what happens in the West, I think we're much more professional and know what to do than bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. Third, I think the big impediment has been litigation. We've had a tremendous amount of litigation. We've got to reduce that. We can do that by collaboration with the local communities, environmental groups, and the timber and ranching industries.
The only thing I'd add to that comment is the collaboration, and just to strengthen that, I think we've learned the importance of collaboration with the various interest groups, and we've gained a level of trust that didn't exist. And we've marginalized some folks who just simply were unable to collaborate.
Right, well, it sounds like a possibility.